Hey, hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Energy Unleashed. My name is Suzanne Worthley, and I am with my co-host, Kim Hess.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Oh, good as always. Is that a
Oh,
feeling?
that sounded
Is that
convincing.
what is that? No,
It's really
actually,
weird.
I'm really good today. For not sleeping very well last night, I don't know what was going on. I'm doing really good.
You know, that whole week, because we're coming off of the weird supermoon week, and then now it's winding down. And I actually find myself having more hard times when they're the new moons than the big moons. I actually slept fairly good through this crazy ass, what was it, a blue and supermoon all at the same time.
Oh gosh, I didn't sleep good when it was really within that 3 days or
Really
whatever.
intense. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, last night I don't know what was going on. So
Yeah. It's weird. I think we could say that every podcast, it's weird energy right now. So
it's weird.
anyway, for
Which is
those of
why
you that
we're
might,
here.
for those of them that may have not listened to one of these before, I do my client session. Being an energy practitioner, I bring forward some of my client sessions, and they allow me in an anonymous way to kind of talk about some of the things that happened during their session. And then Kim and I sort of unleash it and bring it down to more of a conversation to go deeper. And this was an interesting session that I just had recently, but after that, I'm going to combine a couple of elements that are similar. But I had a session with a gal who was new for me, and it was a first-time session, and she teaches some level of voice, and I'm not quite sure or clear what it was. I know that she's at a college level, I believe she said, in terms of teaching, having to do with voice, how voice works. I'm sure it has to do with theater and the arts and things like that. So she uses her voice a lot, but teaches voice. And it was so interesting because she hadn't done this kind of work before. And when we were going to go to the table to do the work, I asked, do you have any other questions? And she said, and it was so cute, she says, is it okay if I make noise? And I went, excuse me? And she's like, is it okay if I make noise? And I said, well, of course it's okay if you make noise. And she goes, I just wanted to ask. And I thought that was so adorable that she even asked. But B, I think that the way that she brought that forward was super interesting. So what I'm going to talk about today is when people actually go through healing sessions and really truly allow themselves to let go. And I love that she wanted permission. Please, if you choose, take what resonates on all of these, toss what doesn't. But if you choose to really do the healing, follow what your body wants to do. Because I have had many different clients, myself included, we'll talk about in a sec, that do different things with their actual physical form, which is actually part of the release therapy. It is part of it. And this beautiful woman today, she was amazing. And so typically the session will be, we do a whole intake, body scan, blah, blah. And then when the bed work comes, they lay on a healing table or a massage table, and it's all quiet. And I have music, and I breathe very loud when I work. And I warn them of that so they don't think there's anything scary in the room. And during it, she made this first very high chirping thing. And I'm going to be honest, it scared me because I work in the dark with my eyes closed, and I forgot that she had said it. I was sort of out in my zone, and I went, whoa. So it kind of scared me at first, but then I was really piqued and interested. So I was aware that she was going to be making these noises. And what I think was so interesting is her noises were all completely different. Some of them were chirpy, some of them were high, some of them were really deep, but oftentimes their motion in their body or their voice or whatever, I'm going to give a couple more examples in a second, match the work. So what I mean by that is when I was at this point with her where I was really removing layers of grief, and it felt like a weighted blanket on her. You know, those blankets that are super, super heavy that they're supposed to use for stress, or isn't that for stress or something?
I can't do it. If I can't move and put my feet out, I'm like,
oh yeah, I can't do them either. But I mean, that was what the grief felt like energetically on her.
Okay.
And my breathing went super deep and really low. And I was really pulling from a guttural blowing for that work. And she started doing this just guttural release sound. And it was almost like a wailing or a moaning that you would hear when you lose someone. And then her other sounds were kind of correlated or aligned with whatever the other work was. So my point is that she was making different sounds for different things, as I do also with my breath. When I'm going to different places, my breath changes. And when I'm pulling things differently, my extension of breath will change, or the frequency, or the high or the low or whatever. It always is changing. And when I got done with her session, I said, oh, your sounds are amazing. And she goes, oh my God, your breathing was amazing. And the funny part is we both have asthma. And it made me laugh so hard, because when I'm doing this work, there's nothing about me that knows asthma is even a thing, because I can breathe until the cows come home. But if I'm, chugging around outside being a human, I have a tough time. How's
Right.
that one, right?
Right. I don't know how that works.
Right. It's very weird. So it correlates with whatever the release is. And I think that's super, super interesting. I'm not sure how or why that works that way, but it does. It's amazing. So that's one of them. Another gal that I have does what we would call unwinding. This is almost like a massage technique or a therapy. And unwinding will be a really jerky, and it will do a motion of literal unwinding. Like, it can oftentimes be a circular motion of a body part. So for example, if they're unwinding energy in their arm, or maybe it's a trauma or something, their arm will unwind almost like a circle kind of a motion, or the body will just kind of flip around a little bit and unwind and twist, almost like they're having a convulsion of sorts. So that's another one I've experienced. I have another client that does similar stuff, but very much more almost sitting up and laying down and moving over, and does a lot of different moves in that regard, and lots of breath work. And then I have another guy that was a fascinating client who did hand motions, and he was mortified when he first started with me, because he thought that I was going to think he's weird, but he said, there's nothing I can do. I can't stop this. And I said, don't even try. I said, this is nothing. And anyway, half the time my eyes are closed, but it had nothing to do with what was normal or not. And his hands would make these motions, like put them together like prayer hands, and they go above his head while he's laying on the bed, and they do these like outwards, and then they'd swirl and they'd move, and they were actually almost like ballet and cheerleader moves all kind of together. It was fascinating. And I was like, holy moly, I know from working on this man that he used to be like a Mayan or an Incan that did these sacred moves in conjunction with holding gigantic big, I would see the big gold plate or the big gold disc that they used a lot. And he would hold those and do those motions. And now in this incarnation, his body knows that that's a release. Isn't that just crazy?
It's so fascinating. And your examples are also different, like
completely different.
Yeah. So do you think, I mean, you talk about the guy from the Mayan, but like with your other examples, is it past life memory, like muscle memory, DNA memory?
That's a great question. And I can't for sure say, but my intuitive self says some of this is definitely that. Especially some, like the beautiful gal I work today. She's like, 69 or 70 and just glorious, grayed hair and beautiful blue piercing eyes. And I looked at her and she was instantly like a Lemurian priestess for me, or Atlantean. And this is the voice one. And so when she's doing this, and oftentimes they will move into a toning too, which I'll talk further in a second. And when they do that, to me, that is muscle memory or cellular memory of moving the voice to move the rock, or moving the voice to elevate or levitate, or using the voice to whatever, because this was what they did in the ancient times, and we've lost those mysteries. And so I think it is muscle memory. I think it's cellular memory. I think it's past life memory. And most of all, it's just an intuitive alignment, because the body knows how to heal. But we, sadly, get embarrassed. We're like, oh my God, I feel so stupid. Hence, asking if it was okay. And of course it's okay, but I loved that she asked, because I think that that's honorable, and it was beautiful. And the other poor man he came to see me quite a few times though afterwards. And he said very many times that he just never lets anybody see him do that. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. You're healing. This is what it's about. So we get embarrassed. We feel silly. We feel stupid. We feel out of control. We feel all of these ridiculous feelings and emotions that really aren't true. Right?
Because I think the voice, but the voice person is really fascinating, because think about sound healing. And you said, I mean, that used to be in ancient times, shamans, they use noises, they use sounds, they use their voice when they do healing. And that she's in that profession Think about how much healing is happening in these sessions with people that she's working with, and they don't even know it.
Right. And when we activate those voices, we're moving dimensional energy. It's incredible.
Yeah,
It's
I went
incredible.
to a healer several years ago that was a shaman, with plant medicine type person, and she was like, make a noise, like from deep down in, make a noise that comes, higher up, make a noise and just make it really loud. And it was all part of removing especially inside the lung area.
Yeah. Open the
Um,
airways. Yeah.
airways, inside the lung area, but also in the energy fields around it. There was past life, there was other things that were just hanging there. That it
Yeah.
was part of removing all of that, which was really cool.
It's so funny you're bringing that up because at the cabin this weekend, I had the kids up and, 2 out of the 4. And my oldest was saying, Mom, do you remember all those noises you used to do in the car when we were really itty bitty kids? Because I did this, this huge, really, really guttural, like
Yeah.
all over the top guttural, just to make them kind of laugh. But it really wasn't about making them laugh. It was making my airways open and letting all the stress out because I was corporate then and I had no meditative skills. I had no nothing, but I intuitively knew that would make something move and come out of my body and that would make them giggle and then they'd all do it. So I was like literally training my kids on how to release sound energy without even really knowing what I was doing.
That's so great. And I just stuffed it down. I didn't make any noise.
Well, which leads me to toning. And I mean,
Yeah.
toning you can start doing, and it would be great for you because you do have your thyroid area that you work on a lot. And the tone comes from that chakra, and that is the thyroid chakra as well. So the toning is simply going up and down the scale and holding it at whatever level you want to. And you can go up and down. So it isn't technically singing, it's holding that same tone. But I oftentimes will go all the way up and down the scale, like, to find where it is that's holding in that area. And I'll hit that one resonance and I'll go, oh, when I get that, then I'll go full bore on that tone for as long as and hard as I can a couple of times until it feels like it releases.
That's
So
really
toning
great.
is incredibly powerful.
So can you just like look that up on YouTube, toning
Oh,
and
sure. Yeah.
just to
Yeah.
follow a pattern or whatever?
Yeah, and you can just make it up. And half the time I keep myself awake in the car sometimes too. When I was driving home from places, especially Minnesota, when it gets dark early and you're tired and you're in the snowstorm or whatever, if you tone, man, are you in charge and in your body and you're right there. Because I mean, it just keeps you awake and it keeps you, and it's doing some great healing while you're sitting there stressed about going off into a snowbank,
Yeah.
So I tone a lot in the deep of the winter when it's kind of like really crappy weather and patterns. It just seems to keep me focused.
Nice. I'll try that.
Strange little secrets we're letting out. But yeah, I mean, it's the other thing that the body does is jerk a lot, like a lot of jerking. Like I woke up really fast. Oh my God, like that kind of a thing. A lot of people will do that. Some people don't just tone, they burst out in singing, like literal, like singing. And it doesn't even have to be a specific song. It would be more like a, light language kind of a song. Light language is also something to look up because that's, different species have different languages. And a lot of people activate what they call their gift of light language. And it will sound like jumbled up stuff to everybody else, but to certain people, you might resonate to certain light languages and think that your body knows exactly what it's saying, even though you don't know what they're saying. It's crazy.
I really like the sound of whales. I know you've had a hard time with them, but you can make deep sounds.
That'd be a really cool one to tone with.
Yeah. And that is just an amazing experience because you're kind of following along. And for me, I can go into that meditative state with that and feel like I'm swimming with the whales or I'm part of that.
Have you tried to do the sound while you listen?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
so you are doing the tone while you're listening.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh,
but it puts me in like a different, higher place.
That's awesome.
When I do that. I haven't done it for a while, so I'm going to try it again and see if it still works the same way. But
that sounds like a really cool idea.
Yeah. So if there's like an animal you resonate with, I would think it would be a great, like depending on the noise or the tone, that it would be really great to kind of pursue that and see what it does for you.
And mine is just really, really, when I do the work on other people, I use my breath because my hands will do something else, my head will do something else, and my breath does something else. So I'm doing like 5 and 6 things at once. So the breath itself will be looking for the energy blocks in people. And depending on what I'm doing, the breath will change. Like I said, when I was removing her grief blanket, it came out almost like a guttural grieving sound of a blowing. And other times I will find myself whistling. Other times there's a lot of people that will whistle and clap. There's a lot of people that will just do like really tweeting kinds of sounds. These are all really pretty typical things that can happen for people in healings. And people, again, I'm really encouraging people to let yourself be free enough to feel that stuff without feeling like I'm silly and I have to hold that back, because it's going to clear whatever it is tenfold. I mean, it really does.
Yeah, so I think one of the fascinating, you had a conference or a session, it was up at Bayfield where you did a weekend
retreat. Yep.
And we were doing a yoga deal, but you did it with music and drumming and all of the things. It was meditative. It was fascinating to see how people react in that environment with the different, when you walk by with a drum, you know, what it would do when you walk by, you know, with like a rattle or people were doing all kinds of different things with their bodies and the sounds.
Because they were laying on the floor and we were, as the ones running the retreat, were doing the work over them and their bodies would react. Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it?
It's fascinating.
Yeah. And it's really fun.
You get done with the session, you feel like, oh,
yeah,
lighter.
Like it worked out.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Now I do circuitry. So when I download or when I'm doing other things, I shake, and other people I've seen shake somewhat too. I don't think I probably shake a lot more than the typical person, because my downloads are coming pretty galactic and far and wide, and they're really strong. And so at that same Bayfield, if you remember, we had the crystal skull Einstein, and Einstein, the crystal skull is about a 35, 40 pound skull, which is just the most amazing thing and so powerful. And when I laid my head down next to it, my circuitry starts, and I'll start to look again like I'm almost having a seizure. And I know that I have literally terrified my daughter when she first saw me do it, because she didn't know what was happening. She thought something was going wrong with her mom. And I'm like, I'm fine. I'm in there, absolutely fine. And yet my body is jerking and going and jerking and going. And I do that massive, massive out of control jerking, and my eyes will roll back, and I'll do all kinds of really strange, odd things when I'm doing either massive downloading or moving cosmic and galactic information, which I've done in Peru as well. And you've even seen me in Peru speak not English, light language will come out, and my body is just like shaking, shaking, shaking. The weird part is Suzanne herself is very calm inside. The core structure of me is absolutely calm and fine and completely in control. And it's the outside. It's almost like one of those jiggle machines that you did at the gym in the olden days, like jiggle, 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 jiggle. But I'm really core strong inside, and everything else is wiggling. And so it's very calm for me, but it looks horrible from the outside. And that's what happens when I do massive downloading or massive galactic grid work.
Yeah, I think Sedona is where you did the Einstein at that retreat, and you had the crystal bed going at the same time with Einstein, and you had people around you holding space, because you were going at it. You were doing a lot of different movements.
That was when my daughter had to leave the room. She's like, I can't watch you because you're scaring me, because I think you might die. And I'm like, I'm fine. And again, a sister witnessed the same thing in Peru, and she was terrified. And she kept screaming to me, are you okay? Because I was in a cave doing some massive galactic work in there. And she kept going, are you okay? And I'm like, I'm fine. I'm fine. I really am fine. She's like, you don't look fine. You don't look fine. So circuitry for me, what it is I do sacred geometry. So what sacred geometry is it uses the platonic solids, and it spins the solids and the math, and it uses the color to do it. So it's like whoosh, at a warp speed, but at the same time, if you place that into a grid pattern, my head is pulling the points of light through the grid. So my head is bouncing and moving kind of very much like I'm just lost my marbles, but I'm pulling and weaving at a rapid pace. And another sister had never, ever seen me do this at all. And she was with me the first time we met Einstein together. And when I held my hands on Einstein and I started to do that, this was a sister that doesn't even know much about the healing practice, period. And she started screaming. She's like, oh my God, are you okay? What's happening? Let go of that. And I'm like, oh no, I'm fine. I'm fine. And then everyone's like, this is just what she does. My poor sister was like, okay, you could have warned me. I said, I didn't know it was going to happen. I didn't know, so sometimes these downloads will happen for me in buildings. Sometimes it'll happen if I'm having paranormal experiences. Sometimes it'll happen at random things, but typically I know when it's going to happen. And they're very comfortable for me. Now, the more fluid my work has kind of morphed over the years, and the more fluid it's become, I don't quite do it as crazy, unless in that instance, that was a lot of crystals. That was a lot.
Plus the work has changed for you too. So that's probably made a little bit of difference.
Yeah. So my encouragement for this though is, if you have to cough, cough, if you have to burp, burp, if you have to clap, clap, if you have to snap, snap, I mean, jerk or whatever you need to do, wiggle, sing, what it's important for you to understand that the body knows what it's doing, because of the fact that it's had, like you said, other lifetimes. It's had instruction sets. It knows from a cellular structure what it's doing and how it needs to receive and or release the information, or both. Right. And to be able to honor that without feeling silly or stupid is really important. And conversely, on the other side of the coin, if you're watching someone and you really are holding a level of honor and respect, you better darn know that that's like something amazing, and not something to sit there and snicker at and make fun of or jab later, because these aren't things that someone's doing to impress someone. They're actually not even, I don't want to say they're not in control, because that isn't true, because we can stop those things most of the time. But to have I think the humbleness to allow it is the beauty of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just so impressed with people that are able to, do what is natural for them.
Yeah.
And so I have a question. When someone's using like muscularly, like just moving, like you said, kind of untwisting, that kind of thing, is it the energy fields on the outside where there's movement and pushing around that forces the body to move?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's actually, in my opinion, both. Okay. Because one of the men that I work with that has a lot of the big movements and almost like a arching. I have another girl who arched so far on the table, it almost looked like she was going to levitate. And we tried to produce it again. We tried to reproduce it afterwards, because I have never, ever seen anyone arch like that. And there was toning going on at the same time. And the breast area was arched up and her head was back so far. And we tried, even with my help, we tried to reproduce it, and we couldn't. It was just, it was so amazing. So I thought for a second there that I was going to witness somebody levitate for real, because I've never seen a body do that before. Oh. So those cases, it's both. We're moving the energy inside of the body because we're opening up the rib cage and we're expanding it and we're getting things out and or in, but it's always working in the field because they work collaboratively, meaning the field is holding the energy blueprint or the template or the instruction set for what the body's doing. So they're both working in unison.
Okay. That makes sense. Yep.
So, but on the other hand, when I do my breath for the work, me as the practitioner, I might simply be doing a template with one breath, and I might be releasing energy with a different breath. So mine is different because I'm the practitioner. Do you see?
Yep.
So yeah, it's very interesting because my breath will change depending on what area or kinds of parts of the body I'm in or where I'm pulling from.
Right. And what you're moving and what you're doing with your breath work or moving things around will trigger things. Like I know for myself, like all of a sudden it's like my arms want to go above my head, or I'm breathing differently. Like I'm taking a deeper breath or something's happening.
Exactly. Yeah. And it corresponds. That's what's so fun about being the practitioner. Like this gal today, I said, oh my God, I'm so excited. That was so much fun for me. And she started laughing. She goes, that was fun for you. And I said, yeah, actually, those are fun for me because I get to witness you're changing, absolutely knowing exactly where I am in your body. I mean, that to me is fascinating. And you have allowed yourself, because I work on you enough to know that I've watched you release any worries or fears also over the years, that you let your hands go to where they need to go. We have another practitioner friend of ours that needs to let her hands hold certain things that other people can't see, but psychically they're there. And so it's important for us to allow those movements to go where they need to go. A lot of times my hand will be stuck. I was just doing a haunted hotel not all that long ago. And a lot of times my hands will get stuck in these really weird, strange positions with my fingers all crunked until something moves. And that's hysterical because it's like, I cannot for the life of me make my body change until this energy moves. And I mean, I am like stuck. And that's because I'm in the actual blueprint grid as a worker. So that's a little bit different than a normal person having a healing session. And I will need to be in that position until I can actually move the energy. And I've done that for years and years and years. That's what I do in the multiverses. I'm just usually doing it with my head. But a lot of times my head, I will notice that my head is stuck to one side or the other until that's like, even in my normal day, I'm washing dishes and my head's kind of over to the right, because it's like, okay, I'm still working away out there in the multiverse, and then boom, it'll release and my head can release. So this is a very unique full body empathing kind of professional level that I don't think a whole lot of bodies are doing. And to tell you the truth, it's not fun. So it hasn't been my favorite part of my so-called career.
I find that for me, my body will just get really heavy and tired. And so I'll sit or I'll go, lay down or whatever. And then I'm out, like just out.
Yep.
And then I come back. It's like, oh, okay, there we go. It's done.
And some of the people are doing this in dream state. And if you sleep with a partner, it's kind of interesting because you will sometimes find that your partner is like, what in the heck were you doing last night? And for people that are massive workers and really work a lot, you do sometimes find yourself just getting your own bedroom, because I could not even sleep next to my husband because I would shake the entire bed, because my shaking was so violent at certain times because my body was so far out that he would constantly being woken up all night long. And it's like, you've got to be kidding me, So also feel comfortable enough if you are one of those massive workers, because there are more than me out there. I mean, I'm not the only one doing this stuff and the crazy stuff in the night. If you're talking in the night, if you're flailing in the night and that you're working, get that sacred space or enough room so that you're not thwarting the work, because it actually thwarts the body releasing the energy as well. And so we want to be divinely, allowing the energy to do the work that it's asking your body to do.
Right. So, right. Without interruption and without interrupting the other. Yeah, for sure.
And then lastly, I think what I would like to mention is when this kind of work happens, oftentimes you're tired. Like you said, I'm just tired. And so if you do have that kind of release, it's really important for you to monitor that, because oftentimes for healing, we will have 2 to 3 days afterwards. And sometimes with massive grief releases or cellular release, the body needs to sleep and it needs to catch up. Or if I do that stuff that I do in Peru, I'm wiped, I mean, it's a lot. And so it will really jack up your sleep patterns also. So just be kind to yourself following any of those kinds of kind of, over the top things.
Right. What do you call them? Episodes, incidences?
I don't know. I was going to say gymnastics. I don't know. So yeah, does that kind of, it's an interesting one, right? I mean, it was an interesting.
No, this is really good, because I the most important part of this is allow your body to do what it needs to do. Exactly. If you're meditating or you're, doing this in dream state or whatever you're in, it's important. I am so impressed with, especially people when you're with a group of people, they allow themselves to do what they need to do. It's beautiful, actually.
And this is ancient stuff. I mean, the first time that I ever held a pose when we were moving massive, really negative energy through at the Palmer House at an event, and this really nasty shapeshifter was really, really dicking around with our group. And I found myself in this yoga pose of the archer of sorts. And I work a lot, not only in my Sagittarius, which is the archer anyway, but I work with the Orion constellation. And I was in this archer pose that, again, we tried to reproduce afterwards. But when I was in the moment, in the time, I could hold that thing forever. And I remember hysterically laughing, all while being terrified, saying, I don't think I could hold this pose if I tried, right? And it was so frozen in that pose until we got the portal to change and the entity energies to change, etc. And I called another peer who does a lot of ancient studies work, and I explained everything that happened to her, and she said, oh no, that's literally how the ancients worked. It's how they utilized the constellation portals with their body mimicking them. And so back to this man who was like Mayan and Incan, we're mimicking the constellation portal sometimes, and our body will take on, you know, how they have those beautiful descriptive, you know, pictures on the apps that you're looking at the stars and you're seeing 4 stars, and they've got like, you know, the lady who's holding the beautiful big water bucket and it's pouring, or it's the lion, and you're like, yeah, but it's 4 stars. I don't see any of them, you know. So it always amazes me when you look at those things, but it's like you are turning into the lady who's holding the actual bucket, or you're turning into the lion. You're turning into the whole energy of the constellation portal versus just looking at 4 or 5 stars. And it's fascinating. And it is ancient work. And a lot of us don't know how to do that any longer because it's just been removed from us.
Yeah, right. All the
if you happen to do it, it's an honor.
Yeah. Oh, fabulous. Oh my gosh.
So
really
cool.
Fascinating. Yeah.
All right. Well, on behalf of Kim and I, if you like this video, please hit like, please hit share, subscribe to the channel if you choose to, and make a comment if you like. We will be back very soon with another one, right?
Soon. Yeah.
All right. Till then.
Cosmic
Hugs.
Bye.